Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fact Fridays. This is the episode for June 27 of 2025. So today's subject is understanding proxy votes in property owner associations, and it's a guide to proxy voting rights and procedures for our association, Camp Branch Acres Property Owners Association, and its members. So, what actually is a proxy vote? We don't use the word proxy that much in everyday language, but it just means to be in somebody else's shoes. So, to be a proxy means that you're standing in their shoes. So, a proxy vote allows a property owner, also called the principal or the main person, to authorize another person, called the proxy or attorney in fact or power of attorney, to vote on their behalf in meetings or elections. So this is done through a signed proxy form that specifies the scope and duration of the proxy's authority. It should be noted that this proxy form, this is just a general legal form that is available. You can find all kinds of examples on the internet. This does not need to come from the Property Owners Association, the secretary, the treasurer, the chairman, anything like that. Any properly authorized form is a legal form that allows somebody to be your proxy. And so there are a number of reasons why people may choose a proxy to vote in their stead. They may not be very trusting of our mail system. We all know that packages go awry. We get mail from other people get mail addressed to us. So when the absentee ballots must meet strict mail deadlines, a proxy ensures that the votes are cast on time despite potential mail delays. There's also the issue of ballot handling trust. So not all of us are, you know, confident that a ballot that is mailed to the POA mailbox is going to be handled appropriately and on time. We've seen where email ballots were lost and were exposed to people that should not have been able to look at the vote. We also, uh, it would be very convenient to have ballots just disappear. And we don't really have a process to track that besides the people that sometimes we're voting against are the ones that are handling the ballots. There's also the need for flexibility with new information. So if the ballot goes out and you vote and it takes about a week to get the ballot back to the mailbox and to get it accounted for, there may be new information that you would have changed your vote on. Now, if you have designated proxy, that person can actually change your vote on the fly in real time. There's also accessibility barriers. There are elderly members and those with disabilities. There are people that don't live here full time that may find it very burdensome to have to drive up here to get a ballot in order to return the ballot and make sure that it is counted. So there are many reasons why a proxy is a legitimate way to vote. And if you have somebody up here in the neighborhood that you trust to be your proxy, allowing that proxy to vote for you is a legitimate thing, and it's not some. I know the boogeyman is like, somebody's going around and is like somehow threatening people, give me your proxy. And I just don't see how that works, because even if you give somebody a proxy, 2 minutes later, 1 minute later, you can send to the secretary of the POA that you revoke the proxy. So this whole thing that somehow proxies are used to intimidate people or take their vote away, um, the very process to give somebody your proxy is just as easy to revoke. And so the legal standing for proxies in Texas is pretty clear. The Texas Property Code, the Texas Residential Property Owners Protection Act, states that POAs can allow proxies during their voting procedures. This is in section 209.00592 and 209.0058. As long as there is no prohibition against proxy voting, the Texas Property Code allows it. We actually don't have any prohibitions against proxy voting in our bylaws. There was an amendment in 2010 where Ron Norris, copying over a provision from a previous amendment, did not include the word proxy. And we got an opinion from the Fears Law Group that said if it wasn't explicitly denied, proxy votes are still in. So I'll show that to you here in just a second, and the link will be in the video description. Another very interesting part that talks about representatives in the Texas Property Code is the actual definition of property owner or owner in the Texas Property Code. It states that an owner is somebody that owns the title of the deed or their representative. And a proxy or a limited power of attorney just for voting rights is a representative. And so anybody holding a proxy or a limited power of attorney for voting rights should be treated as the owner in the owner's shoes. That person voting should have every single right that the property owner themselves would have to vote, whether that's absentee, by email, by electronic reasons, or live at a live meeting from the floor. And this one could be confusing because it does not mean that that person is now the owner of the property. You're not signing over your property. With a limited power of attorney, you are signing over certain rights to that person. It doesn't mean that they are now the owner of your property or they now need to pay your dues, etc., etc. So if you sign a proxy, which is a limited power of attorney for voting rights, you are just giving your voting rights over to somebody else on a limited scope, and you can revoke them as needed. You know, if somebody has your proxy and they voted away, you don't agree, you pull it, you revoke it. It's no big deal. It's actually easier to revoke it than to give them the proxy in the first place. So the definition of owner can be a limited definition of owner for voting rights, and it's right there in the property code. Somebody who has that proxy or that limited power of attorney for voting rights should have every single right that a property owner does to vote. So we've seen a number of ballots and I guess what you would call inserts to ballots that try to justify their actions, and they're just not supported by law. And I will show you in the next slide and with a link the legal opinion from the Fears Law Group out of the Dallas Fort Worth area, and the links to the Texas Property Code that support this contention. And so here is section 209.00592 of the Texas Property Code. It talks about voting and quorum. It says the voting rights of an owner may be cast or given in person or by proxy at a meeting of the Property Owners Association. Now, our fearless leaders have pointed out subsection A1 that says, except as provided by this subsection, unless a dedicatory instrument provides otherwise, a property owners association is not required to provide an owner with more than one voting method. An owner must be allowed to vote by absentee ballot or proxy. They took that method, they said, oh, we're not allowed to accept proxies because it's illegal. It wasn't. It was a decision by them. That was not a decision of the board. It was a decision by a couple people of the board that stated that they wouldn't accept proxies. The decision to not allow proxies, which has traditionally been allowed for so long, was never a board action and therefore is not a valid decision. The removal of proxies was never actually a decision of the board. It was the decision of 2, maybe 3 people on the board, and was never out there in the open in front of the property owners in a valid decision. So, therefore, we have traditionally allowed proxies, and we should be allowing them now. Okay, so here is the short story on proxy voting in Camp Branch Acres. The bylaws support it. Camp Branch Acres Subdivision Property Owners Association bylaws, CCRs, whatever you want to call them, do not prohibit proxy voting. Texas Property Code does not prohibit proxy voting. It's been an established practice. The association has a long history of accepting proxy votes as a standard procedure, and we can see why that is with a bunch of absentee owners and people that live in other cities, elderly, people who aren't on the internet, etc. And there are no restrictions. So there's no valid bylaw clause that overrides Texas property code or forbids the use of proxies. Okay, and so let's talk about this. So there's a common misconception that somehow proxy votes equate like basically strongholding somebody's vote, taking the vote away from somebody or whatever. But a proxy vote, the very form that allows somebody to vote in your stead, is just as easy to revoke. This idea or the specter, this boogeyman that keeps being put out there that somehow proxy votes equate coercion or strong arming, the very same thing that allows somebody to be proxy can be revoked like instantly. I don't understand this. The proxy vote allows somebody to vote in your stead whenever you can't make your vote effective because of where you're located or the modes of voting, the communication, everything else. Um, if somebody wants to revoke the proxy, it just takes one little communication to the secretary to say, like, I revoke the proxy, and it's done. So proxy voting is not an attempt to steal or misrepresent someone's vote. Rather, it is a recognized legal tool that allows owners to participate indirectly when the direct participation just isn't feasible. And so, proxy votes are a standard practice. This is not a loophole. Corporations widely use proxy votes in shareholder meetings and board elections. Nonprofits use them as a standard procedure for member voting and governance. HOAs and POAs use them. They're essential for inclusive community decision making. So, restricting proxies just disenfranchises property owners who have the legal right to participate regardless of physical presence. So, the key takeaway here is that proxy voting is legal and legitimate in Camp Branch Acres. It ensures that all owners can participate in governance, and using a proxy upholds democratic principles when you can't attend. So go to cbapoa.org if you need to. Resources are available for proxy forms and procedures. Reach out to Jen if you need to. Empower your vote, even when you can't be there in person. Thank you. And so, thank you for listening. I can be reached at jenharristx@gmail.com. I'm on YouTube. The channel is Jen-Harris-RN on YouTube. I can also be reached at cbapoa.org, which is the unofficial website. It was official until it was attacked by individuals. So it's the unofficial website that contains historical documents and current information for CBA. And I'm one of the administrators of the Camp Branch Acres Residents Facebook page. And if you just go to Facebook and search for Camp Branch Acres, you'll find that Facebook group. So reach out to me. Let me know what you're thinking. It's all good. Thank you for listening.